I woke up with a simple question rattling around in my head. If you lock ChatGPT and Claude inside Roblox Studio, handed both of them the exact same challenge, and told them to build a game like Rivals completely from scratch, who would walk away with the better shooter? Not who writes prettier code snippets, not who explains programming concepts with more confidence. I'm talking about the entire process. The map, the weapons, the movement, the UI, the optimization, the polish, the bug fixing, and every headache hiding behind those innocent-looking folders in Explorer. Making a shooter isn't one of those weekend projects where you slap together a base plate, throw in a gun model from the toolbox, and convince yourself you've reinvented competitive gaming. Rivals feels smooth because hundreds of tiny systems are working together without screaming for attention. Miss one of those systems, and your shooter starts feeling like two shopping carts fighting in a parking lot. So I decided to imagine this like an actual competition. 2 AI assistants, same developer, same prompts, same amount of time, one winner. Round 1 starts before a single line of code even exists. Planning. This is where most people skip ahead because planning isn't flashy. Nobody uploads a cinematic trailer showing sticky notes and flowcharts. Yet this is where half of development lives. ChatGPT immediately starts outlining the entire project. Folder hierarchy, module structure, remote events, services, asset organization, weapon architecture, match flow, spawn logic. Everything gets broken into manageable milestones instead of one gigantic impossible task. Claude approaches the same challenge differently. Instead of immediately dividing everything into systems, Claude spends more time thinking about interactions. Why does this module exist? How should recoil influence player decisions? Should weapon behavior inherit from a shared class or rely on composition? It asks questions you didn't realize mattered yet. Right away, you notice the personalities. ChatGPT behaves like the lead programmer who already has a whiteboard filled with diagrams before anyone else finishes their coffee. Claude feels like the senior engineer quietly preventing 6 future disasters nobody else sees coming. Neither approach is wrong. They're solving different problems first. Then comes movement, and this is where fake shooters expose themselves immediately. If walking feels stiff, nothing else matters. Players forgive ugly textures. They don't forgive movement that feels like dragging a refrigerator across wet concrete. ChatGPT starts generating sprint systems, crouching mechanics, sliding, jumping improvements, camera bobbing, field of view adjustments, stamina handling, and organized scripts tying everything together. Everything arrives piece by piece with explanations for why each section exists. Claude writes movement differently. Instead of immediately stacking mechanics together, it focuses on consistency. Edge cases, state transitions. What happens if someone slides while reloading during a jump, while switching weapons? Those weird combinations nobody thinks about until your entire character launches into orbit. Claude constantly anticipates situations where things collide unexpectedly. It's almost paranoid, but that's exactly why bugs hate it. Then the guns arrive, and every shooter lives or dies here. A weapon isn't simply reducing someone's health by 20 points. It needs responsiveness, feedback, recoil, fire rate, reload timing, animation synchronization, sound effects, muzzle flashes, bullet trails, hit detection, damage fall-off, headshots, penetration, bloom, spread. Suddenly, your one gun becomes 30 interconnected systems pretending to be one object. ChatGPT attacks this problem with impressive organization. Separate modules for recoil, separate modules for ammo management, clear weapon configurations inside tables. Statistics remain editable without rewriting entire scripts. Want to make an SMG? Duplicate values. Want a sniper? Change configurations. The framework scales nicely. Claude focuses harder on the firing logic itself. Why use raycasting here instead of projectiles? What latency problems appear during multiplayer? How should server validation prevent exploiters? Claude consistently pushes towards secure implementation instead of trusting clients. That's one of those invisible strengths people overlook until someone joins your game firing 5,000 rockets per second. Speaking of multiplayer, networking is where dreams go to die. Everything works perfectly in studio with one player. Then your friend joins and suddenly bullets disappear, animations desynchronize, and somebody somehow becomes immortal by standing near a staircase. ChatGPT lays out remote events cleanly. Client responsibilities, server responsibilities, validation layers, replication logic. Claude starts questioning every trust relationship between client and server. Should this value exist here? Should ownership transfer now? What happens under lag spikes? If you've ever watched a multiplayer project slowly collapse under synchronization problems, you know why these questions matter. Then we move into maps. Rivals maps look simple until you try making one yourself. Every hallway influences combat. Every crate changes line of sight. Every rooftop creates sniper opportunities. Balance isn't luck. It's architecture disguised as decoration. ChatGPT starts brainstorming layouts with symmetry, rotation routes, verticality, spawn protection, objective positioning, and player flow. Claude spends more time evaluating why players move through those spaces. Which corners become camping spots? Which sightlines dominate entire lanes? Which spawn points create unfair engagements? Again, different philosophies. ChatGPT generates quickly. Claude critiques constantly. If both assistants work together, they'd probably create something terrifyingly good. Separately, each exposes different strengths. User interface becomes another battlefield. Health bars, ammo counters, kill feeds, match timers, scoreboards, crosshairs, notifications, victory screens, progression, settings menus. Suddenly your screen contains more systems than the actual gameplay. ChatGPT excels here because organization matters. GUI hierarchy stays understandable instead of becoming 20 unnamed frames buried inside 5 screen gaze labeled New Frame 42. Claude contributes thoughtful interaction design. How much information belongs on screen? Which notifications interrupt gameplay? Where should focus remain during combat? The conversation shifts away from code into player experience. Then optimization crashes through the wall like an unpaid landlord. Your game runs beautifully until 15 players start firing automatic weapons with particle effects everywhere. Suddenly, everyone's computer sounds like it's preparing for atmospheric re-entry. ChatGPT begins suggesting object pooling, efficient loops, reducing unnecessary updates, cleaning unused instances, and separating expensive calculations. Claude looks deeper into architecture. Which systems create hidden bottlenecks over long sessions? Which memory references remain after objects disappear? Which modules silently leak performance? Optimization isn't glamorous. Nobody puts reduced memory allocation by 14% on a thumbnail. Yet optimization determines whether players stay or leave after 5 minutes. Bug fixing becomes its own comedy special. Every developer knows the cycle. You change one line, 4 unrelated systems explode. You fix those. Something you haven't touched in 3 weeks catches fire. ChatGPT proves incredibly helpful because it traces logic step by step. Variables, events, execution order. Claude shines when bugs become bizarre. Those impossible situations requiring detective work instead of syntax corrections. Both eventually solve problems, but they arrive through different thought processes. Then comes polish, the stage separating prototypes from games people remember. Camera shake, hit markers, damage indicators, kill sounds, reload animations, weapon inspect animations, environmental audio. Tiny details nobody notices individually, but everyone notices when missing. ChatGPT produces long improvement lists rapidly. Claude evaluates whether each improvement supports the gameplay instead of becoming visual noise. It's the difference between adding features and refining experiences. One interesting thing happens after hours of prompting both assistants. Prompt quality starts mattering more than model quality. Give either AI vague instructions and both produce average results. Give clear goals, constraints, references, architecture requirements, coding standards, optimization targets, and desired gameplay feel, and suddenly the gap narrows dramatically. People love pretending AI reads minds. It doesn't. Garbage prompts create garbage projects. Detailed prompts produce dramatically better outcomes. Then, documentation enters the arena. Future you is always your angriest teammate. 6 months later, you'll stare at your own scripts, wondering which sleep-deprived raccoon wrote this nonsense. ChatGPT consistently documents modules clearly. Functions receive explanations. Variables make sense. Claude documents reasoning behind decisions. Why this pattern? Why avoid another solution? Those comments become surprisingly valuable later. Team collaboration reveals another difference. Imagine 5 developers working simultaneously. ChatGPT naturally supports structured workflows. Task division feels cleaner. Claude supports design discussions better. Debates over implementation become more thoughtful. If you're leading a development team, both assistants provide value beyond raw scripting. Then there's creativity. Surprisingly, neither AI simply copies rivals blindly. Ask ChatGPT for fresh mechanics, and it starts proposing alternate weapon abilities, progression systems, modifiers, seasonal events, and gameplay twists. Claude suggests changes influencing strategy instead of surface-level features. Rather than adding another explosive weapon, Claude asks how new mechanics reshape player decision-making. Those are fundamentally different creative instincts. Security deserves attention too. Roblox exploiters operate like unpaid QA testers fueled entirely by chaos. ChatGPT helps implement validation. Claude constantly questions assumptions. Never trust client data. Never expose unnecessary information. Never assume players behave honestly. Those habits prevent nightmares later. Testing sessions become hilarious because AI never experiences frustration. You ask why a gun refuses to reload. ChatGPT calmly lists possibilities. Claude investigates execution paths like a crime scene investigator. Meanwhile, you're sitting there questioning every career decision leading to this exact moment. Then, feature expansion begins. Ranked mode, cosmetics, daily rewards, challenges, spectator systems, clan support, match history. Suddenly, the original shooter transforms into an ecosystem. ChatGPT organizes expansion cleanly. Claude evaluates scalability before implementation. Both perspectives matter because abandoned projects rarely fail from lacking ideas. They fail because ideas pile onto unstable foundations. Here's where things become interesting. Throughout this imaginary competition, I kept waiting for one assistant to completely embarrass the other. That never happened. Instead, the lead kept shifting depending on development stage. ChatGPT frequently sprinted ahead during planning, organization, implementation speed, documentation, and structured system generation. Claude background during architecture analysis, bug prevention, edge case handling, security thinking, multiplayer reliability, and deeper implementation choices. The winner depended entirely on what counted as victory. If your objective is getting a playable Rivals-style shooter running efficiently in the shortest amount of time, ChatGPT consistently feels faster. It keeps momentum alive. It rarely gets stuck, questioning every possibility before writing code. Development feels energetic. Progress appears visible every session. If your objective is building something resilient enough to survive updates, larger player counts, future systems, and complicated multiplayer interactions, Claude repeatedly demonstrates why slowing down sometimes prevents catastrophes later. It's less interested in impressing you with speed and more interested in preventing tomorrow's bug report from becoming a 70-comment Discord argument. Here's the funny part, though. The biggest bottleneck in either scenario isn't ChatGPT. It isn't Claude. It's still the human using them. You decide prompts. You choose architecture. You approve code. You test mechanics. AI doesn't magically transform vague ambition into polished games. It accelerates people who already make thoughtful decisions. Give the world's best assistant to someone unwilling to learn Roblox Studio, and you'll still end up with a broken prototype held together by copied scripts and optimism. Give an experienced developer either assistant, and suddenly production moves significantly faster. So after imagining this entire showdown, who builds the better Rivals clone from scratch? If I'm forced to pick one overall, ChatGPT edges ahead because building an entire Roblox shooter rewards structured momentum. Getting hundreds of interconnected systems online quickly while keeping everything understandable matters enormously, and ChatGPT consistently delivers that workflow with confidence. Claude never feels far behind, though. In fact, I'd probably want Claude reviewing the project once ChatGPT finishes major systems, because its habit of questioning assumptions catches problems before players ever see them. So the final scoreboard isn't some dramatic knockout. It's closer than people expect. ChatGPT takes the victory by building the project faster, organizing larger systems more naturally, and keeping development moving without constant hesitation. Claude earns respect by protecting the project from hidden flaws waiting beneath the surface. One feels like an efficient lead developer pushing milestones forward every single day. The other feels like the veteran engineer quietly preventing disasters nobody else noticed were approaching. And honestly, if Roblox Studio ever gains the ability to let both assistants argue inside the same project at the same time, every solo developer should start feeling a little nervous, because the real winner of that matchup wouldn't be ChatGPT or Claude. It would be the game.